All right, now we're recording. So, thank you for joining. I have Jennifer here from what is your law firm now? Because you added another partner, right?
We did. So we are now Sullivan, McGibbons, Crickard, and Associates.
All right.
Yeah.
And today we're going to talk about the potential conflict between trustees and beneficiaries, right? And I know this is a topic that comes up every now and then. I get questions here and there, and I thought we'd just cover it in a quick little video. What what is a trustee? Let's start from the basics. So what is a trustee?
Okay. So a trustee is an individual or a institution that essentially is charged with holding, managing, and distributing assets that are inside a trust for the benefit of the beneficiaries. Who a beneficiary is, it can be a single person, it can be multiple beneficiaries, but they're the individual who are entitled to receive either income and or principal being generated by assets inside the trust.
Yeah, that's so there's these two distinct roles or benefits of the
Mhm.
trust, depending how you want to word it, I guess. And there could potentially be a conflict, right? And I'm sure in your world you've seen a lot of conflicts. One that comes to mind for me, because these conflicts tend to stick in your mind, because it's like, what? How could that have happened? I was working with a little lady in San Diego, and the children were in. I think one was in Irvine, one was in San Francisco. But at the age when she needed care, the children decided to move her from San Diego to Oregon.
Mhm.
And I don't know why. I didn't pry too much information, but you can only think that the cost was cheaper in Oregon, and that could potentially mean more assets for the beneficiaries.
Mhm.
Specifically, in this case, the children were living off of mom's money. So,
Mhm. Well, and how sad to move a parent to a state where they don't have any contacts any longer. So I
no
hope.
friends, no families, no like nobody around. It's so
Yeah.
sad from that
Yeah, so
perspective.
that's a terrible situation, and one that's harder to predict because you would hope that as a parent, when you're creating a trust and you list your children as trustees, the hope would be that they're going to take care of you in your accustomed standard of living and not ship you off to another state. I see it a lot of times with blended families. We have a very high divorce rate here in the United States. We have a very high divorce rate here in California. And so I have clients who have, they're on their second, third marriage. They have children from the prior marriage and are trying to decide how to distribute the assets to their current spouse when they know they have children of a prior marriage who are going to be the residuary beneficiaries. So we have the current beneficiary who is the new spouse, and then we have the residuary beneficiaries or the remainder beneficiaries who are the children from the first marriage who are essentially waiting for this spouse to pass away. And so I spent a lot of times talking to clients about what is the potential for conflict here, because it is absolutely there. And the question of who's going to be the trustee is critical. Is it going to be the surviving spouse? Is it going to be the children? Is it going to be a neutral third party who has no vested interest in it? Is it going to be a neutral third party who's an individual, or a trust company would be another option? So we spend a lot of time because we know there's an absolute potential for conflict in that situation.
Yeah, and sometimes I think what I see most commonly is that mom and dad would probably have the trustee and the beneficiary may be the same person
Yep.
sometimes.
Yeah,
Right.
and that has less potential for conflict. The times where I'll see it where trustee and beneficiary are the same is when you have multiple beneficiaries involved. So you have child one, eldest child, as both the trustee as well as a beneficiary, but you have their two younger siblings who are also a beneficiary of this trust. Obviously, it's a question to the oldest child as far as, and I put it in terms of what hat are you wearing? Are you wearing your trustee hat or are you wearing your beneficiary hat? And they're potentially different. So deciding which assets to keep, which assets to sell, how to invest cash. Is it going to be income producing? Is it going to be really an asset that you want to hold on to and generate principal? What are the different beneficiaries' personal situations? And that's a very difficult road to navigate where you're the trustee as well as the beneficiary. I'll say also it's really problematic because it's not just the assets and what's in the document. There's all sorts of underlying family issues and history, sometimes emotion that, you know, we can't
Emotion's a big one.
we can't predict as an estate planning attorney.
Yeah.
So I had one situation where I met with a mom. She had 3 children. Her husband had passed away a long time ago, and she wanted all 3 children to be trustees. And I said, okay, how do they get along? They get along great. It's not going to be a problem. And, you know, lo and behold, mom passes away, and it was a huge problem. And all 3 were co-trustees. All 3 were equal beneficiaries, but they couldn't agree on anything. And so the administration was just completely stalled because they couldn't get anything done.
Yeah.
And they had never gotten along. They hadn't gotten along for decades. And I didn't realize that. So now I will say, as an estate planning attorney, I ask that question a lot. And sometimes you just have to kind of go through the process to figure out what questions to ask.
Yeah, and it's funny because, you know, each beneficiary, like you said, could be at a different stage of life, right?
Mhm.
And so one beneficiary could have a large need for income today, whereas other beneficiaries could say, no, this can wait, we can push it down the road. And that could cause some sibling tension or
Correct.
beneficiary tension there as well.
Correct. Or even if beneficiaries at the moment get along great, you have, you know, siblings, beneficiaries who are co-owning property, and maybe that works great for the first 10 years, but is it practical to continue to work 15, 20 years from now? And when you have ongoing trusts like that, you really have to think about that and how to unwind that in a way where you're maintaining the family relationship and harmony, because that's critical and important as well. So, but you know, sometimes clients and parents just don't see it. So that's part of your job, and my job is to talk. I'd say play devil's advocate a bit and say, okay, well, let's talk about this asset. Do you think both kids will want to keep this home in Del Mar when one lives in New York and one lives in downtown San Diego?
Yeah.
New Yorker may not want to, but you know, the parents will say, oh, it's been in the family forever. Of course they both want to keep it. What I find is having a really well drafted document is a big piece of it. Also having multiple conversations among the family members,
Yeah.
having you, Amar, involved, you know, with the financial piece, having myself as the estate planning attorney involved potentially, but really having all the family members there and talking about what are mom and dad's goals, what are their priorities, what's their intention, and if there's an issue, let's get it out and on the table now, so that we can try and resolve or deal with any potential conflict while everyone's alive and everyone has capacity and everyone remembers. Because it's
Yeah.
very difficult to say, mom and dad didn't want this, when you were all sitting around the same table together and had that conversation.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I think yeah, so we touched on a lot of things there. So what type of situations create the greatest risks? I think we talked about blended families
Yeah.
could be a key thing that would create some risk. I also think that if your children are depending upon you for income, if your kids are going to bank of mom and dad consistently, that could be another red flag that could potentially create some risk.
Mhm.
Are there any others that you can think of?
Yeah, so blended family is a huge one. Also, when you have beneficiaries who are at different stages in life, so not necessarily relying financially on mom and dad, but maybe you had children, you know, earlier and then later in life. You know, one's kind of established and kind of on their own business wise and living wise, and then you have a younger one who has not gone to college yet, has not gone to graduate school yet. I find, you know, people struggle a lot with how to equalize that when you have just different beneficiaries in different life stages. So there's
Yeah, there's a lot
potential
of
there.
time difference. there.
There's also potential risk when you have, I'd say, kind of, I'm going to call them problematic, but they're not necessarily problematic assets, but non-marketable assets. Let's put it that way. If you have cash, you have stock, investments, those are kind of easy to deal with. If you have real property, residence that one of the beneficiaries is living in and not the other beneficiaries, you have a business entity. One beneficiary is super involved in the business, the others are not. Those are asset-specific situations that you really want to talk about and flesh out. And who's going to be the trustee of that and making those decisions is really critical.
Yeah. So the solutions around this is obviously you need to work with an attorney and an advisor to probably craft a custom a situation or a solution that's tailored to your family.
Correct.
And then also communicate that to the other generations that you're talking to that will impact, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So this was great. Again, for our viewers, we want to keep this a conversation. If you could leave any comments or questions below, we'll do our best to reply to them. And thank you for watching.
Great. Thank you.
No.